Hey everybody, before we get started, I just want to remind you this is a bit of our musicians like Adam DeHarp, Argo Comics, Argo 10, Bugs OG, Carlos, Dragon, Ferris, Jeremy Vasquez, Jester LaFay, Jonathan Sandoval, Legendary Boss Hunter, Liam Kessler, Regent Raptor, Rise of Kenji, Rogue Robin, Charvor, Sean Pryor, Some Guy Named Bob, 17, and Van the Crow. If you like what we do and want to see more, consider supporting us on Patreon and get access to episodes early and lots of good goodies, and it really helps us out. Thank you for your support, everybody. Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll that 5-star. You do, though, by the way. Probably. We'll get into it. Because it's time for another big one, boys, gals, and non-binary pals. Because we have an Annie servant here to change the meta and make arts great again, though for some reason I don't feel like abbreviating that slogan. Wonder why. Anyway, Caster Artoria. Castoria is here, and are you Lupin's son? Anyway, I'm going to stop at the memes. We're going to walk into it. This is Wanted. We break down a character's real-life history and folklore, their lore with a capital L, their mechanics, and more, such as their rarity, not their star rarity, but how often those rate-ups come, and lots of other little goodies. We do actually have a asterisk on that, but I'll get into that into a second. But yeah, it's time for another big meta one. Hopefully this video does pretty good like the Scotty one that also went huge. But, you know, you guys are interested in these kinds of things usually, so we'll see how people think about this. So let's get into the business. Believe it or not, I had to take my intro a couple of times there. Now, this is normally where we jump into the real-life history and folklore stuff, but I'm not going to lie to you. The normal history and lore stuff, it's going to be lean. So, obviously, Artoria is basically literally FGO's poster child. She is on the app icon. She's in most key graphics. The only other character I think you could make an argument for is MASH, and even MASH doesn't get to be on the app icon, right? So, she's a fairly popular in the fandom. She's the, OG character, going back to the original Fate Stay Night days. There's multiple versions of her character already in the game, and some of them have even appeared on previous Wanted videos in the series. And in the West, where the bulk of my audience lies, the Arthurian legends and cycle is generally part of pop culture osmosis. Most people are familiar with the characters and tropes, even if they don't know the details and all the different versions. You know a lot of the beats and stuff. So there's not really a point into unpacking the Arthur Legendarium again, and then also explaining, hey, who Artoria is. So, there's no real point in doing that. That would be kind of reductive. Unless you somehow started FGO just now on Anniversary 5, and have not ever watched any of my content again, in which case, I'm sorry, but you probably know who King Arthur is. So if I said it's King Arthur as a girl, that would be wrong, because lore. But closer than you'd think. Because to further this, Castoria is basically a spoiler character. She's a major foreshadow and a thematic tie-in to Lost Belt 6. Lost Belt 6 won't come out for almost a year now, and a lot of her exact lore and history is tied into that story. Like, obviously, you can read her normal profile stuff and elements, but a lot of that stuff doesn't make sense until you can actually, play out the chapter. And obviously, we don't want to spoil that. That's going to be really cool, and it's in a year, so, we gotta wait a little bit. So, there's only so much that can be done, but I did still manage to get you some things that you might like, and we're going to talk about a few interesting historical, lorical elements that we can get into to pad out the front half of this episode and let you know some interesting facts you might not have known. Now, Castoria's profile makes explicit note of her being from Tentacle, as opposed to just England like normal. Tentacle is a village, but also a parish and a castle in Cornwall. It's the region in the southwest of England. It has a strong historical connection to King Arthur and that general mythos. The Cornish people existed as their own kingdom for a while. It's its own, Celtic language. It's a nice place. Been there before. Got some relatives there. The name of the village in the original Cornish, which I will not try to pronounce off the top of my head, means village on the rock. But in general, the Tentacle Trevenna area is known for its archaeological value. Tentacle Castle is a historic site on Tentacle Island. It's literally surrounded by the sea on 90% of the sides. The current castle ruins there were built by Richard, Earl of Cornwall, sometimes in the 13th century, but there are archaeological traces of some kind of activity on the island going back to the Roman period as early as the 3rd century. Archaeologists believe it was a high-status settlement for a while before it was a castle area, so there's some stuff in there. Now, according to good old Geoffrey of Monmouth in the Historia Regum Britanniae, Tentacle Castle was the strongest holding of Gorlois, or Gorlois. I don't actually know if it's supposed to be French with the silent S or not. Anyway, he was the Duke of Cornwall. It's where he placed his wife Ygraine, with an I, after Uther Pendragon expressed an interest in her. met at dinner and thought she was cute. Deciding to make love, not war, Uther consults his wizard buddy Merlin, who naturally disguises him as Gorlois, to enter Tentacle Castle and bang a grain. It's okay, Dolores had recently died. This meeting leads to the conception of Arthur, so there you go. Now, later authors and scholars would try to integrate Tentacle a little more closely into the Arthurian canon, claiming Arthur was born there, for instance, associating it with other events in the narrative of Arthur or other characters, various poems which integrate Lancelot, Tristan, etc. into areas around Tentacle. And other than a curious artifact called the Artnos Stone, you might want to look up. There's not really a strong historical or mythological basis for this, but Tentacle is where Arthur was conceived pretty classically, all the way back to, Geoffrey of Monmouth. So it has tangible roots in the mythos. Now, I do want to throw this out there. Castoria's profile makes heavy mention of a staff of selection, but based on my initial research, this seems to be a lore note specific to her backstory stuff. Nothing really particular in here. Modern pop culture writers put an emphasis on Merlin's staff, but there's no particular emphasis on historical material, and other staffs that may or may not be magical don't really show up a whole lot in history. Though there is apparently a strain of Acropora coral named Merlin's staff, which is bright purple and yellow. Just a fun fact I found while Googling things. But yeah, the staff seems to be a fate-specific element. Now, Castoria's profile and later ascensions do make mention of access to a few more of King Arthur's fun toys, so we can mine these for a little bit more folklore. Carwanan is mentioned. That's Arthur's dagger, literally little white hilt or haft. It's only mentioned in the original Welsh stories. The dagger was allegedly given to Arthur by God, along with the sword and spear. You know the ones. And in various tellings, it's said to be magically accurate when thrown, cloak the wielder in shadow, cut enemies clean in two. Mallory also mentions Arthur using a dagger to kill a giant, but does not name it. Also, Spumador, literally the foaming one, is another one of Arthur's horses. There's a lot of horses associated with Arthur. And fun fact, I do know that when Castoria first came out, there was a little bit of digging about this, but I was able to find some sources on it, possibly because people were so interested in it, because I think it was pretty obscure before. But Marmiados, which can also be spelled a couple ways, is mentioned in the Vulgate Merlin, the epic poem Merlin, and then the prose version. So it's a sword forged by Vulcan for Heracles, which was passed down to King Rince Runs Rej. There's like 3 different spellings of his name. Oh my god, guys, calm down. Who was an enemy of Arthur. Arthur defeats him and takes the sword, and finding it to be of even higher quality than Excalibur, gives the sword to Sir Gawain. So that explains various mythos elements you may or may not have heard of. But yeah, Marmiados sword, it's real. As in that it's actually in some historical stuff. So let's also throw it to the Fate-specific bits to add a little spice to this meal. Alright, so for Fate lore, because it's been a little bit since I got on this particular soapbox, let's talk about names first. In Shinjuku chapter in FGO, it's pretty explicitly stated that Arthur's name is meant to be derived from the Latin family name Artorius. That's a real etymological theory, by the way. And that our female Arthur is the feminine form of Artorius. I took 2 semesters in Latin. I can tell you Artoria, spelled I-A, pretty good in this sense. It's not perfect, because there isn't usually a feminine to the declension that Artorius is in, but the A is a decent ending. That follows the logic of other nouns and declensions. Alternatively, some people have used the Arthuria, Arthur, I-A, as an alternative spelling under the basic same logic as Artorius becomes Arthur. Since we're backporting an etymological origin with no real historical basis, either is fine. I don't think there is a traditional use of a feminine Artoria name previously, so there's some wiggle room there. I also want to point out that the phonetic pronunciation in Japanese is very clearly romanized as Artoria for anybody listening at home. Seriously, listen to any Japanese person say the name. Now, despite some spin-off games and other materials using these perfectly cromulent spellings previously, such as Fate Extella, for example, it should be obvious to anybody playing FGO in English that for some unknown reason, Type Moon has insisted on Altria as the official spelling. So, canonically, Altria is the intending spelling by the author, not anyone ever located in the British Empire or any languages derived therefrom. So, if you want to use Altria, that's fine. You have the power of Mr. Nasu on your side. You're basically never going to hear me say that outside of commenting on the fact that it's wrong, because it is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, and linguistically, the L should be found nowhere in this composition, and we dropped a vowel sound for no reason. It just doesn't make any logical sense. I really don't know why. I don't know if somebody at Type Moon thinks it's cooler. I've heard the theory that because it was spelled that way on some, like, old-ass merch, and otaku are really, like, anal retentive, they don't want to change it, but also otaku don't play the English version? I don't know. Whatever. It's the one they go with. It's not good. Nasu is not necessarily good at spelling names that aren't Japanese either. Whatever. But I will continue to use Artoria. I don't care if that hurts my SEO. That is absolutely how you should spell that in a translation sense. Anyway, moving on. On the subject of being a caster, this is not a normal class for Artoria. So the best source I could find, let's say Moonwiki, says that conventionally she qualifies as a Saber, Lancer, Rider, or Berserker. Typically. Makes sense. Also with the fact that Carwenan is now included in the FGO canon, I think we should count Assassin in there. At least she has a Noble Phantasm for it. But her optimal class has always been Saber. However, in an interview all the way back in 2007, it was stated that Artoria had the potential to become a mage, but magecraft's not the path of the king, and she didn't have the patience for it. So there was actually, other than obviously the FGO meme of an Artoria in every class, keep giving Kawasumi-san money, technically they did foreshadow that Artoria could, hypothetically, in another life, another world, become a caster. Cool. So, obviously, she is a major character in Lost Belt 6. She'll be in the story. Not really a lot we can do to avoid that. It's got to get in there. But also, in our upcoming next summer event, she will be a bonus servant because she had a major banner right before it. This is something that JP starts doing, I think, this year and has kept doing next year and will presumably do this year as well, where they have their anniversary release and then the big anniversary servant is a bonus servant in summer or whatever other big event comes next. Because they understand that you've probably just spent a shitload of quartz on that one banner, and, you know, they're usually really good for farming these extra anniversary boys and gals. Also, during 5th anniversary, she does have a trial quest you can check out, so if you want to check out her mechanics. I don't believe there's any story in it. Comments, let me know. So, like I said, it's a little loose, but we can't go too hard without spoilers, so we've prevaricated long enough. Let's talk about the thing you're all here for. Let's talk about this mechanics. So first, as a little bit of a bridge point, Castoria is somewhat unique in that the name of her NP and skills change over time. Her NP animation name is different in her 3rd Ascension, and some of her skill names change after story beats in Avalon Le Fay. These are not mechanical changes, so we don't need to show the spoiler version, just the initial one. But they exist. She does also add a passive skill after clearing certain things in Avalon, but it's not critical to her kit, so we're just going to skip it. It's a thing in about a year. You'll figure it out when we figure it out. Trust me, she was already meta-defining way before that buff. Now, stat-wise, Castoria is fairly lower in attack, tied with Anastasia, Tomo, and Merlin, and fairly high HP. She ties with Scotty for number 3 overall for casters, the kind of spread you'd expect from a support unit like this. She is, of course, the classic QAAAB. I think that was 3 A's. Anyway, it's a caster deck. 3 arts cards, perfectly average hit counts, and average NP gain. Not that it matters, but still, pretty typical stuff. So, her NP is both unique and also completely to be expected from an arts build. So, it gives your whole party 30 to 50% attack up for 3 turns, and it cleanses their debuffs, and then it gives you this new anti-purge defense for 1 hit 3 turns, and can rise as high as 5 times with overcharge. This new defense, some people call enforcement defense, or true invul, whatever you want to call it, shiny shield, whatever. It's an invulnerable and invincible, which Pearson cannot beat. It's pretty spicy for CQs. Obviously, it still loses to remove buffs beforehand, but still, very solid. You cannot pierce it. It's a whole different level. Her skill 1, Charisma of Hope, very similar to Merlin's Dreamlight Charisma. You have a 10 to 20% attack up for 3 turns, and a 20 to 30% battery for all allies. More bats and buffs. Second skill gives a further targeted ally 10 to 20% battery and amps all allies NP gain by 20 to 30% for 3 turns. Final skill gives you 30 to 50% arts up for 3 turns to a target ally, and then 30 to 50% bonus damage versus threats to humanity to a target ally for 3 turns, and also 1 turn invul, so you've got a 2-for-1 for hard defenses. Not only can you do the team-wide 1-hit, but you can also, for a turn, make one specific guy invincible. Very strong numbers on these as well. And for passives, she has Magic Resistance A, Territory Creation EX, and a unique passive you can see for 10% boots on arts crits on herself. Pretty typical stuff, but the MRA is very nice for a caster. The EX is pretty typical. Big arts. By the way, her 1 app end skill gives her bonus damage versus sabers. Again, not that it really matters, but still, it's good to know. So, a lot of those skills are very straightforward, but compositionally, I do not know if it can be undersold how popular and impactful Castoria is for the general, like, metagame strats. Her NP is basically a straight improvement over Jean for your standard stall and grind art strat. It's, monumental for challenge quests and hard story fights. She brings you 50% battery right out the gate, assuming you can afford to level her skills, and has pretty easy ability to give you 50% attack up and 50% arts up for 3 turns, and also a 30% NP gain for 3 turns. So the raw damage output potential gets up there via looping arts NPs, makes her very good at farming as well. Very all around. And honestly, her buffs are almost completely generic. The only one that isn't is the arts up, and even then, most servants have at least 1 arts card, it's kind of mandatory. So she has a place with the waivers and Renas of the world as well. Not as optimal, but she's got a 50% battery and she brings a lot of attack up. You can make it work, plus NP gain. So, yeah, it's a whole thing. Like, she's good for CQs, she's good for farming. I don't really know, like, where else that is. And you can count, like, hard boss fights in the CQ zone as well. So, yeah, very solid all around. Now, obviously, double Castoria gives you even bigger numbers. That means you can do the 100% battery. You can also basically double attack and arts output, which will give you some very spicy memes. But I know a lot of people said Tamamo was dead after Castoria was announced. Don't actually sleep on Tamamo for the stall strats. If you are running a longer-term battle, like a CQ or a story battle, where you can't clear it in 3 turns, you gotta remember, Tamamo gives you another 50% arts boost. She can also do charge down for stall strats, and has a 30% NP damage boost for the team. And then between her skill 3 and her NP, Tamamo packs a lot of healing, something Castoria doesn't do, and a unique cooldown reduction. So if you want, like, pure damage amp and longevity, Tamamo actually synergizes very well with Castoria. I said this, literally a second ago, but I think that the arts units actually basically replaced by Castoria is Jean, though her star generation ability, Jean's, is, still fairly well placed. Obviously, if you want to do, like, even more arts builds, you can use Paracelsus, who is free to play. He also really helps your arts damage and looping potential. There is another weakness to Castoria we should consider, is that on her own, she has very little interaction with crits. Obviously, she can boost her own crits, but she doesn't really do anything with star weight, critical damage, star generation, anything like that. So consider using units like Casgil, Mozart, and Hans to shore this up in various ways. Stars per turn, star generation, stars all at once, however you see fit. Also consider Sherlock as an interesting support option to give you some ability to mitigate enemy defenses if they're being cheeky, pierce defense, that kind of stuff. That is, again, something that Castoria does not necessarily do on her own, doesn't really deal with enemy buffs or hard defenses. So you have a wide variety of options that can get out there. But obviously she's a support, so you want to pair her with deeps. Who do you want to bring as DPS in this case? Basically anybody with arts. I have read analysis from people who are better at FGO math than I am, several sources, that basically anybody who has an arts NP probably will do perfectly fine with Castoria. Like, if you can invest in a Castoria arts team, double Castoria, Castoria Tamamo, Castoria Paracelsus, something like Black Grail or other things to, like, boost up your effectiveness, anybody can be useful. But obviously, there are some standouts. These include units like Summer Musashi, Small Da Vinci, Vlad as the OG arts deeps, Dioscuri obviously being very new and having piercing. If you need the budget option, you can consider the holy 3-star Archer Trinity of Robin, Ureli, and Tell, and arts welfares like Summer Hokusai. You have a wide variety of units who are compatible to really get in there, and whatever you need, whether it's blowing waves away or killing bosses, you got something for it. Now, like most supporters, Castoria Ce Selection itself isn't really that important, but there are a few solid choices that'll get you in there. Demonic Bodhisattva will give you extra invols and require less work in charging her NP, so if you're actually planning on using it, it's a great one, along with any others that'll give you overcharge. Prisma Cosmos is my preferred strategy for Jean's. It'll get you passively generating NP Merlin style, so even when your DPS is hogging all the command cards, Castoria can now continue to accumulate that NP if you need that, like, on a certain regular order. And then there's the humble passive support CEs like Holy King or 2030, just shore up your team. Give them more HP, give them more stars, something like that. I will also throw out there that, again, being a support unit, her Bond CE is actually useful in this context. It gives all allies a further 10% attack and NP gain, just passively, even without her skills being up. So, decent. All around, some very solid stuff there. And like I said, I cannot lowball to you how much, if you can fully invest in all the things, and yes, we're going to talk about the mat charts in a second, but if you can fully invest in a Castoria, she really is very optimal at farming and very optimal at hard content, story bosses, and challenge quests. No, the way that was so hard to say. Gonna leave that one in. Now, let us talk about the mats. So, her Ascension mats are pretty normal, though you do need 5 shards to start for the end. But the real kicker is her skills. You will need to level them, and unfortunately they do require 11 eggs and 10 shards per skill. If you have seen people online freaking out about eggs, this is why. Because it's very spiced. And unfortunately, like I said, you probably require at least her first 2 kills at 10, because you need the 50% battery, and you'll probably do the third as well. And also, her I don't have her append chart up because it's hard to fit in the graphic, and it's relatively new. We'll figure out if I can adjust that in there. But the main thing you need to know about that one is she will need an appalling amount of Lost Belt 6 mats. I think she needs like 90-something or 120-something bells total between her 3 append skills. So keep that one in mind. I know that's the upcoming months. Obviously, when this book goes public, it'll be the new month. But that's one of the mats you can pick. That's only 30. You need a fuck ton more. It's a lot. Now, as you might expect from a meta-defining unit, she has quite a few rate-ups already. Obviously, going to be featured on the 5th Anniversary Servant banner with a trial quest this year for the 5th Anniversary. Also, featured on the Lost Belt 6 Summon banner number 2. That comes out after the first drop. And also, we'll have a straight-up banner in the 25 million downloads campaign. No idea what that equivalent will be in NA, but it's there. Also as a new limited SSR, in case that wasn't clear. She's available in all future Lucky Bags as well. And that's what we got. Yeah, there's your new meta, the arts meta. All in all, really great unit. There will be some more rate-up opportunities if you're interested. Also, like I said, it's not like Scotty where you basically require double Castoria to work. So if you're not interested in going whole hog, you've spent your Saint Quartz on something else, don't feel too disappointed. You will have people in your friends list with a Castoria. But she's pretty rad, so consider it. Consider the role. But that's it. Many happy returns, guys. Here's to 5 more years in the new blue meta. So, that about wraps up our Wanted here today. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like on YouTube. Go ahead and fire off in the comments down below. Let everybody know whether or not Wanted was a guaranteed catalyst for you in those commentos, as people do. Watch Wanted 5 times. Maybe get 5 Castorias. I don't know. Check my science. See if it works. You can also join our Discord. Link is always in the video description and on our channel page. We have a roll thread there, a dedicated thread where you can post your rolls. So that also works as a chance to show your Castorias. If you're new here and Aviding, please subscribe to this channel so you can get more Wanteds. I do this basically every time there's any limited SSR. And a permanent SSR as well. And a story-locked SSR. Basically, for sure, SSRs. We don't really do SR videos anymore because the views did awful, but you never know. If these videos get like a whole boatload of views, maybe we'll bring it back and try. We're open to experimentation here. And even if you're already subscribed, considering the bell for notifications, you always know when we post a video or when we stream, because who knows when this video gets posted. You should have had that bell rung so you would know. You could get in the Wanted right away. You can also join our channel memberships by clicking the join button or the link in the description. Get access to membership badges and emotes. And, like I said at the front, consider supporting us on Patreon. Could have gotten this episode early. Several days early, I think, at this current rate. And at other levels, you can listen to our regular podcast, Let's Talk FGO, in audio format. If you support us at a higher level, you can listen to us make that show live every time. All in all, it's a fun time. Really helps us out, support us. And that's it. I'll see you guys next time. When the heck even is the next new SSR?